And welcome back to my Minecraft Let's Play, ladies and gentlemen. We are on part 19, and as you can see, I got a fair bit more done with the house here. Like, you know, I got the second floor almost done. I still need to decorate a little bit. I did get the library done, so I'll be able to start making enchantments here pretty soon. So that'll be fun. All right, so let's head out back to that shaft that we found. Ah! No! Oh boy, Minecraft. What can I say about it that hasn't already been said? It's a visually simple world-building survival sandbox simulator with enough complexity in its craft formulas to write its own textbook. This game has quite a bit of history that it's stamped into the gaming world. First being released in its most simple alpha form by its creator Notch around 2011, and from there it just slowly grew. And kept growing. And growing. And growing. And yeah, you get the idea. This, of course, only became exasperated when almost everyone with a YouTube account wanted to show off their own worlds and experiences with the game, making it quite possibly one of the most saturated games to be Let's Played on the internet. Later on, Minecraft was purchased by Microsoft, which will only help the game by publishing it to different platforms aside from PC. Now with that said, the playable character in Minecraft, better known as Steve, is a character that has received quite a bit of support to become a fighter for Super Smash Bros. So much so that I feel kinda silly for forgetting to mention him during the Banjo-Kazooie video when I brought up popular choices for Microsoft reps. Oh well, I'm talking about him now, so I hope that makes up for it. With that said, however, I hope you guys are ready, because this moveset is a doozy. Generally, when most people think of a Smash moveset for Steve, they usually just give him various weapons and items that can be crafted within the game and call it a day. And I could do that for myself as well, but who are you kidding? I don't make simple movesets just for the sake of making things easy for myself. If I see potential, I go right in. Like I stated at the beginning, it's a visually simple world-building survival sandbox simulator with enough complexity in its craft formulas to write its own textbook. So as such, a proper Smash rep from such a game should only be treated in the same fashion. So because of that, before anything else, I will be getting the gimmick out of the way first. So strap in, folks, we're here for the long haul. Oh, but before I forget, Steve would be an average weight fighter with only 2 jumps, and he would be able to crawl. Though his crawling would be just like it is in Minecraft, where he kinda just crouches, then slides as he moves. Kinda like Rosalina's crawl when you think about it. Anyways, class is in session, folks. My name is Professor BJ, and I hope you all are ready to learn. So here's the big thing. The game isn't called Mine Attack. It's called Minecraft. And how can you properly represent a game in Smash if you don't at least try to incorporate the game's most important themes into its character? So, the biggest gimmick that I've incorporated into Steve is that you need to craft his moveset. When a match first starts, Steve will pretty much have nothing, just like you do when you start a new world in Minecraft. He will still be able to do the basics, such as jumping, grabbing, and throwing, and he'll still have his basic and special attacks. But here's the thing, the attacks will all be terrible. For literally all of his basic attacks, he'll only be able to do one thing, punch. That's it. That's all he can do when you start a new world in Minecraft, so that's all he'll be able to do when you start a new match in Smash. Jabs, tilts, aerials, even his smash attacks. All he'll be able to do is a single hit punch that can be thrown towards the direction of the control stick. Even his throws will be bad, being able to do only basic throws that only deal a little bit of damage and hardly send opponents anywhere. And all of these punches only deal a set 5% of damage. As for the special attacks, well, these will actually be Steve's most important attacks. You will literally need to rely on them if you want any hope of survival in the harsh world of Super Smash Bros. And right on cue, you'll be learning all about those in your next class, folks. The special attacks would all involve block placements. Each directional input for the specials will have Steve place a block of differing types of material, and he would then need to break those blocks to collect the drop materials that they give. Collecting these materials is what would allow Steve to literally craft his moveset. His most important specials would be his side special and his down special. The side special would be stone placement. Steve would literally just place a stone block directly in front of himself, and the spot where the stone can be placed depends on the angle of the control stick when activated, but the first block placed must be placed on the ground. After that, the player can stack more blocks on top of the first stacked block if they so wish. This is technically an attack, so foes can be hurt and launched a fair distance away if Steve places a block right on the spot where the opponent is. So don't worry, he's not completely defenseless at first. These blocks are also treated like platforms, so any player can stand on top of them, but players cannot walk through them. He can have up to 5 of these stone blocks on screen at a time. If he tries to place a 6th stone block, it won't do anything. Also, these blocks will remain in the spot placed indefinitely, and can only be removed by breaking them. Any player can break these blocks, but they do require to be dealt a certain amount of damage before breaking. It would require about 25% worth of damage to be broken, so for Steve's case, he would need to punch a stone block 5 times in order to break it. When a stone block is broken, as I stated before, it will drop materials, 3 to be exact, of which Steve can pick up and use to begin crafting his moveset. For Steve, they're not treated as items, so all he needs to do is be close to the materials and they'll immediately go to his person. Opponents, however, can pick these up, and for them they are treated as items, and they can be thrown just like items as well. So of course, opponents can do this to simply try to keep Steve from getting them, as the more materials Steve gets, the more dangerous he becomes. The stone blocks have a percentage chance to drop 4 materials in particular: a 50% chance to drop stone material, a 30% chance to drop iron material, a 15% chance to drop gold material, and a 5% chance to drop diamond material. Yes, I know it's not actually stone that drops the gems, it's actually ore that corresponds with each specific gem that needs to be smelted in an oven. But this moveset is already complicated enough, so this is just to make things a little bit easier to deal with. Just assume that Steve has an oven in his hammer space or whatever. Now as for what each material does, I'll go over those later. For now, regarding the down special, this would have Steve plant a tree sap that would grow immediately into a full-grown tree. It is kinda similar to Villager's down special, but the tree doesn't need to be watered or anything, it just grows immediately as soon as it's planted. It can only be planted on the stage though, it cannot be planted on top of another block. And the growing tree can deal damage to foes just like Villagers, but to compensate for the fact that it grows immediately and that there's no middle step like for Villagers, it does far less damage and knockback. And again, yes, I know this isn't quite how it works in Minecraft. Trees don't grow immediately as soon as they're planted unless bone marrow is used on them. But again, this is just to make things less complicated than they already are. The tree grows specifically 4 blocks high and does grow leaves around it that would be 5 blocks thick. Like the stone blocks, the tree will remain forever until it's broken by players. The wood blocks need 20% of damage before they break, so 4 punches from Steve. And the leaves only need 5% before breaking, so 1 punch from Steve is enough. The leaves will also automatically disappear if all 4 wood blocks are broken before the leaf blocks are. And while the leaves don't drop anything, breaking the wood blocks are guaranteed to drop a single piece of wood material. So a single tree can give Steve up to 4 wooden materials if he manages to get them all. I should also mention that Steve can grow up to 2 trees on the field at a time. If he tries to make a 3rd one before one of the others is completely gone, then it won't do anything. Now for Steve's up special, this one's probably a little funny for most avid Minecraft players. It would have Steve do a quick jump, then place a piece of cobblestone directly underneath himself, allowing himself to gain some small height when he lands on the block that he just placed. This of course is something that everybody who plays Minecraft does when they want to gain height, so it just seemed like the most appropriate thing to do. The player would be able to control Steve normally while standing on this block, just like he can all other blocks. He would be able to do this up to 5 times in the air before needing to touch a part of the stage again to refill the blocks. Also, since you really aren't supposed to be able to just place a block anywhere without it touching another block in the actual game, only the first block placed will be allowed to be suspending. All 4 remaining blocks must be stacked on that first one in order to come out. So Steve cannot just place that first block, jump off of it, and then place another one in the air. If he tries, nothing will happen. This, however, means that Steve can only gain vertical height, meaning that if the player needs horizontal distance, they'll need to place a stone block from their side special on the side of one of the cobblestone blocks to try to make a bridge. This is actually a good time to mention another fun little detail with Steve. In Minecraft, if the player crouches while moving, they'll be unable to fall off of blocks, even if they move Steve towards an edge. And funnily enough, this is actually already a function in Smash for all characters who can crawl. If you have them walk towards an edge while crawling, they won't just walk off. So players in Smash could do this as well with Steve to allow him to place blocks on the side of other blocks without falling off. Funny how things work out like that, eh? Anyways, I should also mention that the cobblestone blocks can only remain out indefinitely if they're spawned on the ground, and after taking 20% of damage, they'll break and leave a single guaranteed piece of stone material. However, the cobblestone that are suspended in the air cannot remain out forever. They'll break automatically after 5 seconds. This way players won't try to camp out over the blast zone. Nice try though. They also will not drop any materials if they break this way. A player has to break a block in order for them to drop materials. And all blocks that were stuck on the first suspended block will break after 5 seconds of their placement as well. This includes stone blocks from the side special if those were attached to an airborne cobblestone block. This rule does not apply to suspended blocks that were first placed on a block that was initially touching the ground. Those will stay in the air forever until broken. I hope I'm not bothering you guys too much by talking about everything out of usual order, but this is just the best way for me to talk about this complex moveset without things getting too confusing. Anyway, now for Steve's neutral special, and this would be how Steve would be able to obtain the remaining materials that he could use to craft his moveset. It would have Steve place a monster spawner. This is a block that does just as its name implies, spawns monsters. Only one monster spawner can be on stage at a time, and Steve can't make a new one until the first one is broken, which would take a whopping 50% of damage caused to it just to be able to do so, just like in Minecraft. Trust me, without a pick, those things take forever to get rid of. Every 10 seconds after it's placed, it will spawn a random Minecraft monster, and they'll roam around the stage and attack any player that gets too close to them. Not even Steve are safe from these beasts. They don't care, they'll attack anybody, even assist trophies. Only 3 monsters can remain on stage at a time. After that, the spawner won't make any more until one of them is gone. The monsters will also remain out forever, and will only go away if they're killed. Monsters can die by falling off the stage of their own stupidity, being knocked off by a player, or can be killed by taking too much damage, with the damage that each monster being able to take varying between each creature. If the monsters are killed from taking too much damage, they can drop materials for Steve to pick up and use to craft for his moveset. As for the mobs that can appear, there are 6 of them, each with their own unique properties. The most common monster that can appear would be the zombies, with a 28% chance to appear from the spawner. Zombies walk pretty slowly around stages and can jump only high enough to reach the basic platform like the ones on the battlefield stages. They can deal about 2.5% of damage to players and deal only a little bit of knockback if it hits them. They can be killed after taking 20% of damage, and when they are, they'll drop 2 random gemstones. Normally they can only drop iron gems or items, and even then there's only a rare chance of that happening, but again, to make things less complicated, they'll be able to drop gold and diamond as well for Smash. Iron will be the most common gem they drop, with gold being the second rarest and diamond of course being the rarest. There is actually also a chance that they can drop rotten flesh, which would act as a food item that players can eat. You probably shouldn't though, as it would cause the consumer to take poison damage for a little bit. Also, that's just gross. The second most common mob to appear with a 25% chance are the spiders. Spiders are the fastest moving mob and can jump the highest, but they're also the weakest, only being able to deal 1% of damage a hit, and can only launch foes a little bit. This can mean, however, that they can barrage players if they aren't careful, but they shouldn't be that hard to deal with, considering that they'd only need to be dealt about 16% of damage before they drop. Speaking of dropping, spiders have a guaranteed chance to drop a single material, and that would be string. The next monster to appear at 21% of the time would be the skeletons, wielding their trusty bows. Their movement would be about the same as zombies, but they don't really need to move that fast, considering that they can snipe any player in their direct horizontal line of sight. The arrows do fly kinda slowly though, a little slower than Toon Link's arrows to give a comparison, and they would only deal about 4% of damage as somebody is hit by one, and they can only cause flinching. The skeletons will only fire an arrow once every 5 seconds so long as someone remains in their sight, and they'll go down after about taking 20% of damage, and when they do, they'll have a chance to drop a single gemstone material, again just like zombies. And again, skeletons don't normally drop any gems, but you should all know the drill by now. But skeletons do actually have one more little quirk. No, not those quirks! If a skeleton gets close enough to a spider, it will actually begin to ride it and become a jockey. Now these guys are a lot more threatening, with the speed and mobility of a spider and the durability and long-range power of a skeleton. You best take these guys out quick, otherwise they could put a real damper into everyone's plans, Steve's included. But when they do go down, they'll drop both a piece of string material and a random gemstone, with an even higher chance than usual to drop diamond. The fourth kind of monster to appear with a 20% chance to do so are the most infamous, the notorious creepers. Creepers are the slowest mobs, but can jump a little bit higher than zombies and skeletons, but not nearly as high as spiders can. And as I'm sure you can guess, any player that gets too close to it and doesn't get away from it after about 2 seconds will be met with a rather explosive ending. These explosions will deal about 25% of damage to anyone who's too close to the explosion. And of course, these explosions will lead to KOs if the player's damage is too high. Creepers will die normally if they're dealt 20% of damage before they can explode, and are guaranteed to drop a single material of gunpowder. Creepers do also have a little quirk to them as well. If at any point they're hit by an electric-based attack, they'll turn into a charged creeper, whose explosions have a much larger radius and will deal a whopping 30% of damage to players. The launch distance they can deal won't change though. Next up, with only a 5% spawn rate, would be the most dangerous, the Endermen. These guys walk around very slowly and they don't jump, but they'll also teleport to random spots on the stage. They can deal 7% of damage to players, and also have a bit of force to their launch power, even being able to KO any player with a high enough damage percent. The Enderman is also able to automatically destroy any blocks on the stage, as well as pick up and use items. These guys would need to be dealt a whopping 40% of damage to kill, and they'll drop 3 random gemstones, with the diamond actually being the more common stone to be dropped. And for the final mob to appear, with only a 1% chance for it to show up, it would be a pig. Yep, just a pig. They don't attack, they just walk around the stage randomly, just hanging out. They can also be treated like mobile platforms, with players being able to stand on top of them and ride them around. But the big prize comes from when you kill the poor piggy. After taking 10% of damage, it will drop a piece of pork chop, which is treated like other food items in Smash, which can be eaten by any lucky player who snags it first to heal a whopping 20% of their health. And as a bonus, if the pig happens to be killed by a fire-based attack, it will instead drop a cooked pork chop, which would heal 40% of health to any player. And that's all the time we have for the special attacks class, folks. I hope you all paid attention, because this will be important for your next class, where you're going to learn about what is done with those collected materials. As Steve collects materials, he will automatically use those materials to begin crafting his moveset. Don't worry, you won't need to manually create the recipes yourself. I don't think your opponents will be that nice to wait for you to do that. The different materials will of course create different weapons and items that Steve will then begin to use for his attacks to replace his basic weak punch attack. Steve does have different priorities on what weapons he'll make first depending on what materials he has, as well as what tier of the weapon he'll use based off the specific gemstones that he collects. For example, if Steve can manage to collect a single piece of wood, the first thing he'll always make is a wooden sword. And if he manages to collect a piece of stone material after that, he'll begin to use the stone sword, which of course would be much stronger than the wooden one. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is list off all of the items that Steve will make once certain materials are collected in order of the priority that Steve will make them in. Yes, I know this is beginning to sound way too intricate, but again, so is Minecraft. You can blame these guys who asked for this character! Anyways, so as I stated before, the first weapon that Steve will always make so long as he collects a single material of wood would be his sword, and he'll always prioritize upgrading the sword as well when he collects the proper materials, with him defaulting to the strongest one. These other materials in order of power would be gold, to stone, to iron, to diamond. And before you ask, yes, gold is actually a very weak and useless material for weapons, about on par with wood. So why do you want it? I don't know, it looks shiny. So yeah, basically you don't want it. It's just there to be a nuisance. After the sword, if the player collects duplicate materials that the sword already has, or is just weaker than what was used with the sword, Steve will then make the pickaxe, which can be upgraded with the same materials. The pickaxe won't be used for attacks, but instead will automatically be used to help Steve break stone blocks with less swings than a punch would to collect materials faster, or for just Smash strategies in general. After that, if the same materials are collected again, Steve will make the woodcutter's axe, which is pretty much just the same as the pickaxe, except it's used for wood, not stone. Now generally, Steve will have all 3 of those tools so long as he gets 3 pieces of wood material, and will automatically disperse any collected gems appropriately. So after he has those 3 items is when Steve will begin to diversify the priorities of his crafting. If Steve collects more wood and then some string from a spider, he'll then make a fishing pole. And if he collects more wood and string after he already has a fishing pole, he'll then make a bow. And getting a little more complicated with the recipes, if string, wood, and 7 pieces of stone are collected after Steve's 3 tools are already stone or stronger and has a bow, he'll then make a dispenser. If 3 pieces of gunpowder are collected from creepers after Steve at least has his 3 main tools, he'll make fireworks. If 5 more pieces of gunpowder are collected after Steve makes the fireworks, he'll make TNT. Hey, you all still with me? Alright, just making sure. I know this is a lot, so please bear with me. If 4 pieces of iron are collected after Steve's 3 main tools are already made of iron or diamond, he'll then make a trapdoor. And if he collects 3 pieces of wood, 4 pieces of stone, and a single piece of iron after the trapdoor was already made, he'll make a piston. And finally, if all of those before mentioned items have been made and Steve then continues to collect gemstones, he'll then begin to start making armor, which will actually decrease the amount of damage and knockback that he'll take depending on how much armor he's wearing and what type of gem it's made from. He'll prioritize from gold to iron to diamond, and he'll prioritize remaking current sets of armor that he's wearing with the stronger gems before outright continuing to make the rest of the armor. For example, if he's wearing a gold helmet but then gets iron, he'll then make an iron helmet before making the next piece of armor. As for the armor itself, first he'll make the helmet, which would require 5 pieces of a single type of gemstone. Then he'll make the boots, which would only require 4 gemstones. Then the leggings, which require 7 gemstones. And finally the chest plate, which requires 8 gemstones. And that's it! That's all of the materials that Steve will craft. So pretty much, if you see him put on that diamond chest plate, you're done. You have completed crafting Steve's full moveset. Or so you'd think. There is actually a downside to this. Remember, in Minecraft, whenever you die, you lose all of your materials that you have on your person at that point. But that is a little mean, so for Smash, if Steve ever suffers a KO, he'll only lose some of his materials and items that he crafted. Not all of them. Specifically the items that he prioritizes last, so generally the armor and the more complicated items will be the first to go. That is unless you only had the sword and such when you were KO'd, in which case you better start mining and get crafting all over again. But fret not, because there is actually a way to get certain pieces of items easier if you're lucky enough. I left this out before, but zombies and skeletons actually have other drops outside of just gemstones. There's a very rare chance that zombies can drop swords, pickaxes, chopping axes, and even random pieces of armor that can vary in gem quality. And skeletons have a very small chance to drop their bow for Steve to then pick up, as well as armor. And there's the bell. Did you get all that? I hope you took notes because this will be on the next test. Get a move on now, folks, or you'll be late for your next class over the attacks. So, now that you know what Steve will craft when he obtains the various materials, it's time for me to tell you how he'll incorporate those crafted weapons into his attacks. I should also mention that a lot of Steve's attacks will be multi-tiered, with them changing depending on which weapons he's crafted. With that said, if Steve only has the sword and no other items aside from the 2 axes, all of his attacks will just be a basic vertical sword swing from high to low that can be swung in differing directions depending on controller input. It's nothing too fancy, I know, but that is how Steve fights normally in Minecraft. He doesn't do any dance tricks or fancy flips, he just swings his sword, and it gets the job done. And of course, the damage and launch power of the sword will vary depending on which materials were used to craft it, with wood being the weakest and diamond of course being the strongest. Despite all of the first tier attacks with only the sword being only a basic swing, they do still function as they should in the context of Smash Bros, even now being able to charge up for the smash attacks. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive straight into this. Steve's jab will be one of the few attacks though that will not change despite his arsenal growing larger, and will remain as a single hit jab with his vertical sword swing. This attack is spammable and will move about as fast as we see it in Minecraft. Steve's dash attack with the sword only would have him swing his sword with some forward momentum, but if he crafts TNT, he changes his dash attack into a TNT toss, where he throws a TNT block while breaking his run, and the TNT will explode as soon as it hits the ground. The explosion itself is fairly deadly, dealing moderate damage while also having a fair knockback with some decent KOing power. This is how it will be for all attacks that involve TNT, but do note that Steve can also be hurt by the TNT as well, and it wouldn't deal a whole lot of shield damage. For the dash attack specifically, he should throw it far enough to be out of its range, but I'm sure it would still be possible for him to somehow get caught in it, what with the shenanigans of a Smash match. Also, don't throw it at something that's too close to Steve, like right into a wall or an opponent right next to you, otherwise he will get caught in the explosion. This is a case where spacing is key. The sword's side tilt is the same as the jab, it just allows Steve to move as he swings. If he has a bow, however, he'll instead use that for a long-range arrow shot. The arrows fired will fly at kind of a slow speed with them hitting the ground after a point, but they do go pretty far, so it's good for zoning. This attack is nowhere near as spammable as the sword, only being able to shoot 1 arrow every second and a half. The sword up tilt is just a spammable sword swing that swings upwards, but if the bow is equipped, he'll instead fire an arrow straight into the air that will fall down after a bit. This falling arrow can hurt Steve, by the way, so best watch out. The down tilt is another one of the few attacks that will not change once Steve gets the sword, and it's of course just a spammable vertical sword swing while crouching. May seem useless since all the other sword's attacks are there, but remember, you can't walk off a stage, platform, or blocks while crawling, so use that to your advantage. All of the sword smash attacks are just vertical swings that can be charged, side swinging forwards, up swinging upwards, and down swinging forwards only while crouching. His side smash will change if he obtains the dispenser, which is a machine that can give the player any item that it has inside of it when activated. This specific dispenser, however, will have arrows in it, and in Minecraft, when the dispenser shoots out arrows, it shoots out arrows. In this case, it will be a type of semi-trap. Using the side smash will have Steve place a dispenser block on the ground, which will automatically fire 3 fast-moving arrows straight forwards if another player is in its range, or after 3 seconds. From there, it'll automatically break, allowing Steve to be able to use it again. But be careful, because the dispenser is just the machine doing its job and cannot discern friend from foe, so even if Steve stands in front of it, it will fire at him too. His up smash will change if he obtains the fireworks, which will allow him to fire a single rocket into the air that explodes at its peak. Mechanically, this would work similar to Isabelle's Lloyd rocket down special, which players can get caught into by the rising rocket, then will take big damage if caught in the middle of the explosion. Unlike Villagers' up special with their fireworks, this will go a little higher and only cause 1 explosion, not multi-hitting like Villagers is. You know, first the tree, now the fireworks. Next thing I know, people are just going to tell me to make Steve an Echo Fighter for Villager. This smash can be used immediately if it isn't charged at all, but if it is charged, it will put a delay that lasts longer depending on how long it was charged for. Unlike other smashes, this doesn't actually increase its power, just how long it'll be before it fires off. I should also mention that Steve can move around normally if he does put a delay on this rocket, but he won't be able to fire another one until the one he just put down explodes. And the down smash will change if the TNT is obtained, allowing Steve to place a TNT block on the ground that will explode after a couple of seconds. It will never immediately explode, allowing Steve some time to get away, and just like with the fireworks, if the smash is charged, it will delay the explosion, but this does not actually increase its power. The neutral air is the final attack that can never be something else once the sword is obtained, and of course, it's just a vertical swing, but in the air. The other directional arrows with the sword are all of course just that, with the direction changing depending on controller input of course. But if the bow is crafted, the forward, back, up, and down airs will all use just that, and fire an arrow that functions just like it did for the side and up tilts, into the appropriate directions. The down air, however, actually has a third tier to it. If TNT is crafted, Steve will instead prefer to drop a block of TNT straight downwards that explodes as soon as it hits the ground. Just try not to use this too close to the ground. It should also be noted that if you would prefer to have the sword for certain attacks instead of some other items, you can just choose to do that. Just make sure you don't pick up any materials that would make those other items. Now for the grabs, and these will actually be some of the more complicated moves for crafting, as they do require some of the later obtained recipes before they begin to change. Of course, by default, Steve will just grab with one hand, which would have a pretty pathetic range. But if the fishing pole is crafted, Steve will instead use that for a long-range grab, and it can even work as a tether recovery, just like Isabelle's. Unlike Isabelle's, however, it does function as a grab, so it can't be held out. Steve will automatically reel it in at the end of the animation, and opponents cannot shield the hook. Steve's pummel will always be the same no matter what. It's the one move that never changes, and it would just be a quick punch from his other free hand. His default throws would also be pretty pathetic, with him just meekly throwing the foes into the appropriate directions. His forward, back, and up throws will all change if he obtains the piston. It will have Steve place a piston in the appropriate spot to send the foe flying. For the forward throw, he'd place the piston between himself and the foe and send them forwards. The back throw will have the piston spawn behind the foe and send them flying past Steve as he steps into the Z-axis to get out of their way, and the up throw will have the piston spawn underneath the foe's feet, sending them high into the air. The down throw, on the other hand, will only change when the trapdoor is crafted, which will generally be the throw that changes first anyway, since Steve will always prioritize making the trapdoor before making the piston. It would have the trapdoor spawn under the foe's feet, and then they'll immediately fall through it into a hole that randomly appears under the door, where they'll fall into a lava pit that was in the hole and then fly back out. This would be hilarious to see when used on platforms or stages in general where there clearly isn't any solid ground for them to fall into. Now, as a quick side note to mention before we move on, Another cool quirk specifically for the piston is that once it's crafted, Steve will actually use it for his up special instead of the cobblestone. He'll do a small jump, then place it underneath himself where it will launch him high into the air. This will not put Steve into free fall, but unlike the cobblestone where he can use it 5 times, he can only use the piston once. Also, just like the cobblestone, the piston will remain suspended in the air for 5 seconds before it automatically breaks, allowing any player to use it at their own leisure. But the piston will be the only block that will not remain on the field forever, even if it's placed on the ground. It will always break after 5 seconds. And that's all the time we have today for the Minecraft Attacks class. I hope that you all were able to follow everything properly. And if you have any questions about anything, please be sure to direct them to my assistant, Mr. Comment section below, or his assistant, Mr. Twitter at BrawlFan1 on Twit. Now go on, move along to your next class, the class for the final smash. So, just like everything else with Steve, he even has multiple final smashes that change depending on what he's collected and crafted. His default final smash would actually not even be an attack. He would activate creative mode, where Steve just gets tired of playing survival mode and just straight up gives himself items. His 3 main tools will all automatically be upgraded to diamond, and he'd be given a full set of diamond armor. That's all it'll give him though. He'll still need to collect materials for himself if he wants the TNT and the piston and whatnot. This would be a good final smash to use if the player is having trouble collecting everything, and with the final smash meter, can really help move things along for the player. Now if Steve gets his final smash and he happens to already have at least his diamond pickaxe, he will instead create a nether realm portal. In Minecraft, these portals can only be made by collecting obsidian, which can only be harvested with a diamond pickaxe. This would be a cinematic final smash where Steve will quickly make the portal and any foe too close will be pulled in, where they'll suffer big damage from the treachery that is the nether realm, falling into a lava pit, then being attacked by ghasts and zombie pikmin before being launched back through the portal and launched away when the cinematic ends. Now then, Steve actually does have one more tier to his final smash. Remember these guys? The Endermen? Well, they actually do have one more item that they can drop that I neglected to mention. It's a very rare drop, with only a 1% chance of it appearing, and considering how rare it is for the Enderman to appear in general, good luck actually getting it. It would be the Eye of Ender. If Steve is lucky enough to pick this up, his final smash will automatically default to its most powerful version, the End. It would be another cinematic final smash where Steve would activate the End portal and suck in all foes, regardless of their distance. They cannot get away from it. From there, they will be transported to the End, where they will be attacked by the mighty Ender Dragon. When this happens, it's an automatic KO, regardless of damage. That's broken! You may be yelling right now. Well, for one, no yelling in my class! And 2, considering how unlikely you'll be able to even get this final smash, I think it's alright to let it cause automatic KOs. Remember, it can only be used if the rarest monster that only appears 5% of the time from the monster spawner drops it, and even then, they only have a 1% chance to do so. So good luck actually getting it in the first place unless you're just really lucky. On top of that, once the smash is used, it consumes the Eye of Ender that you had, so you'll need to be lucky enough to get a new one in order to use it again. So more often than not, actually seeing this final smash will be very rare. And that does it for today's final smash class. Everyone go on and head to your final class for today, the class of aesthetics. Hello again, students. For your final class of the day, I'll be teaching the aesthetics of the character. So let's finish this up. So starting with the colors, well, believe it or not, this is actually where things got hard. You may be scoffing at that considering the literal lecture of a moveset described to you before, but I mean it. The thing about Minecraft is that you can customize your character to look like anything. In the PC version anyway. In the console versions, you can buy pre-made skins to use at your own leisure, and those number in the literal thousands. So you'd think that would mean it would be easy to pick alts for it, right? Well, it's not that simple. Yes, there are literally thousands of skin options to use, but none of them I don't think are actually official. There are technically only 2 costumes that are seen as official costumes. The ever-familiar Steve skin, and then the female Alex skin. After that, the rest were made by other random people, and not by the actual owners of Minecraft themselves. Now I may be wrong about that, but from what I looked up, that just seems to be the case. Now with all of that said, there is actually one saving grace for me to use that I haven't talked about until now, and that's the game Minecraft Story. This technically is its own thing, but the colors of the alts could very easily be references to some of the main characters for that game. Though please try to remember that this is just a fan-made video, and I am not by any means saying that these should be the only outfits. There are just so many other options that I'm just going to do this just to keep it simple for the time being. In any which case, the default outfit would of course be the Steve skin, and the first alternative outfit would be the Alex skin. The next two alts could have a design that matches the character Jesse from Minecraft Story, with one that's a male and the other that's female. The next color could be in reference to the character Petra, and the one after that could look like Olivia. Both are members of Jesse's gang. And the final two alts would actually be alternative costumes, two that could be argued as official, and they'd be from the Super Mario Mashup Pack, the pack that's exclusive to users who bought Minecraft on Nintendo systems. The first alt would of course use the Mario skin, and the second could use the Peach skin. The stage entrance would just have a dirt mound already being on stage and Steve digging through it to appear. His first taunt would simply have the character look left, then look right, with their body kind of jagging with their head as he does. The second would have Steve simply place a random torch on the ground, in reference to how players should always be putting torches all over the place as to not get overrun by random monsters in the dark. The torches don't actually do anything except for slightly light up the area around them. They disappear after 10 seconds, and only 5 can be out at a time. They can also be placed on top or on the side of blocks if you feel like being fancy. And his final taunt would have him drop a bunch of random materials on the ground. Not the materials collected for the moveset, don't worry, this won't affect those at all. He just spits out a bunch of random materials from Minecraft that will just sit on the ground and disappear after 5 seconds. You can hold the taunt button down to make Steve continuously spit out materials forever until you let go of the button. And finally, for victory animations, the first will show Steve breaking a block of diamond ore, then collect the diamond and look at the screen as they hold it. Mostly in reference to how victorious you feel when you finally get diamond in Minecraft. It's a good feeling. The second would have Steve just ride in on top of a pig while holding some wheat, and both he and the pig will look towards the screen. And for his final victory animation, it will have Steve create a small pedestal, then place an Ender Dragon egg on top of it, which he begins to admire. In reference to how your prize for beating the Ender Dragon, and effectively beating Minecraft as a whole, is a dragon egg that you can take as a trophy and as proof that you've slain the beast. And that does it for the class of Minecraft Steve. Yes, I know there was a lot to this moveset, but as I said at the beginning, despite looking like such a simple game, Minecraft in its whole has a lot of complexity to it, so this was just the best way I felt to properly represent the character. Just simply giving him weapons and being done with it, I felt would be an injustice to the theming of Minecraft. Like I said, it's called Minecraft, not Mine Attack. So, with that said, I hope you all were taking notes, as this will be on the test next— okay, I'm stopping this right now. I'm not even a real professor. But, if you would still like to learn about even more possible characters in the future and the Smash movesets that I think for them, be sure to subscribe, and leave a comment down below to request what character you would like to see me do in the future, or contact me on Twitter at BrawlFan1 on Twit. I hope you all enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching!